Hello friends, today we're going to be talking about property management. If you're in the game of real estate, you need to decide if you're going to be your own manager or are you going to hire one. What questions should you be asking your property manager? Well, today I'm going to break that down for you right now. Hey everyone, I'm Rick Annunziata with S&R Properties. And today we're going to be talking about the basics of real estate investing. It's 7 things you and your property manager should understand. So let's dive in. Number 1, you have to use a legal rental agreement. I cannot tell you how many times we've seen rental agreements that require certain things from the tenants that are not legal in Massachusetts. I've also seen plenty of owners mishandle last month's rent and security deposits. And that can cost you plenty if you end up in court. So be careful. And don't forget to use a properly worded rental agreement and keep it simple. Number 2, should I use a tenancy at will or a lease with my tenants? And what's the difference? A tenancy at will is a month-to-month rental contract, while a lease is normally a 1-year contract. And on the surface, it might seem like the lease is a better option, but there are some problems with it. As a landlord, you are locked into that tenancy lease for a year. And if you have a tenant that you'd like to see move out, it is much harder to evict that person. And if you decide to sell the house, guess what? That lease travels from owner to owner. So for example, you could not accommodate a new owner's request to have that unit vacated at closing. Simply put, a tenancy at will gives the property owner much more flexibility. And if a person is not going to pay rent, they won't pay no matter what kind of rental contract you use. And it's easier to evict a person when you use a tenancy at will. A good manager knows how to enforce the rental contract. Finding good tenants and collecting rent is the most important function of a manager, but so is understanding how to negotiate with a tenant who might be late in paying rent. An eviction is in nobody's best interests. If you have a house that's vacant, you need to get it rented out, and you need to do that as quickly as possible. And a good property management company can help you do that. Number 3 on our list is how do you screen your tenants? And it seems like a pretty common question and rather simple, but it is one of the most important things you need to know. How do you screen your tenants? So a good manager should do a full criminal background check. They will call up their previous landlords to make sure they paid on time. And then they'll run a credit report. They'll verify employment history and they'll do an income verification. And then they should do an eviction check, and they do that by looking at housing court records to see if there's an eviction on file for that person. There is a lot to check, but you want to make sure that you do a thorough job so that you get really good tenants in your property. Number 4 on our list is, what does a property manager charge? Okay, so a typical fee for a manager is between 8 and 12% of the monthly rental revenue. But most managers charge 10%. If the building is very small or perhaps a single-family home, they will normally charge a flat fee. And a good manager can take care of everything. They collect the rent, take the calls, including the ones late at night that owners hate to get. And they manage the maintenance on the property. Now, a flexible company can take on a small part of the management for a reduced fee. For example, you might not mind managing, but are just looking for help finding tenants. And a good and flexible company can do that. The 5th question you should ask your manager is, what happens if there is an eviction? The management company should understand the details of the eviction process. They should also understand the laws governing an eviction and be able to negotiate with the court on your behalf. File the necessary paperwork, and if necessary, meet with a mediator in housing court. They should also be familiar with fair housing laws too. The rental industry is regulated very carefully in Massachusetts, and we all hear stories of property owners getting nightmare tenants. But most nightmare tenants come from novice owners or managers putting the wrong people into homes. You really need to use basic common sense, good intuition, and great screening techniques when interviewing candidates for your property. Number 6 on our list is knowing the vacancy rate in your area. Now, depending on where you are in Worcester County, vacancy rates can be around 5%, which is below the national average. And you need to remember that that rate is an average, so some areas might be lower and some might be higher. And to give you some perspective, there are some areas around the country that are experiencing a whopping 18% vacancy rate. Now, if you cannot rent an apartment quickly and keep your buildings occupied, your investment is going to do really poorly. So you need to know the vacancy rate. And finally, last on our list is ROI. ROI is return on investment. And while return on investment is not a function of a manager, it's important because purchasing wrong will have a negative effect on the manager because the owner will not have adequate capital to manage the property. Now, a poor purchase means less money for repairs and maintenance, and in turn it means your building's going to be harder to rent. Now, a standard down payment required in a multi-unit building is 20 to 30%. The amount you put down is your investment, out-of-pocket money that you're putting into the property. You need to look at the entire income potential of the property, and then you subtract that by the expenses, things like insurance, mortgage, water and sewer, and the vacancy rate. Also add in a yearly maintenance estimate and any immediate capital improvements needed. You should try to make at least 7% on your investment. And when you think about it, the rate of return in an average year of the S&P index in the stock market is around 7% rate of return. So why invest in real estate if you're barely matching the stock market? Well, the answer is very simple: growth equity. You see, over time, your tenants pay for the property, and each year you own it, your equity rises. And that's the additional benefit of real estate ownership as an investor. So friends, an increase in equity each year, coupled with a decent return on your property, will make management a whole lot easier. Just make sure you purchase correctly and always run it like a business, because that's what it is. So friends, there you have the 7 questions you should understand about property management. Thanks for listening.